role.
Right, a lot of people wonder why Barack Obama didn't just find a new church if he didn't go along with his now controversial pastor. Well, today Obama says he might have done just that. Well, his latest comments about the Reverend Jeremiah Wright came on today's edition of the morning talk show, The View.
Had the Reverend not retired, and had he not acknowledged that what he had said had deeply offended people and were inappropriate and mischaracterized what I believe is the greatness of this country for all its flaws, then I wouldn't have felt comfortable staying there at the church.
All right, let's talk more about Senator Obama and Reverend Wright with CNN contributor Roland Martin. And Roland, in all honesty, you said, what are we talking about, obviously? And I said, we're talking about the Reverend Jeremiah Wright and Barack Obama. And your response was?
Why?
Why?
Because we have delved into this topic in many different ways. And it seems that people are asking, well, I want more, but what more do you want? At some point you have to say, do you want him to leave the church or do you want him to stay?
Yeah, but real quickly, you're saying why. But he didn't say why to the women on The View when they asked him the question. He's responding. Right. Yeah, he's responding to it, though. So of course we're going to talk about it. And of course it's going to put it in the media more. It's going to be out there. People are going to play the soundbite like we're all doing every single network.
Right.
He's continuing to talk about it as well.
Well, I mean, obviously when one is asked, you're not going to sit here and dance around it. But I'm talking about a much broader point.
Right.
I've been having this debate online in terms of on radio, people saying that who is actually continuing the conversation? Are we the ones who continue to ask? Do we continue to play the same sound bites? Or do we also elevate the conversation? The bottom line is this here. We are spending this level of time on a single pastor and talking about 4 or 5 comments that he made as opposed to the totality. Are we also dealing with the whole issue of faith from a broader standpoint? Are the individuals on the left and the right who make comments that we might deem to be controversial, why do people stay? You know, I asked the same very question to people who gave their tithes and their offering to the Catholic Church and their dioceses were settling lawsuits, people who were sexually abused. Now, granted, here's an individual who is running for president who this is his particular pastor. I get that. But you do have to ask the question, okay, what is the answer we're trying to achieve? I think people are saying, well, I want more to an answer that they're not going to get.
Right. Well, they're not going to get it.
They're not going to get it.
But also he's saying, and for the first time he's saying, had the Reverend not said this, had he not realized what he said was wrong. I haven't heard the Reverend say that. Obviously, that must have been in a personal conversation.
Right, because
to do that.
Right, absolutely. Because what we have been doing is we've been trying to reach out to him. I've actually talked to his family members, and he has not been talking. Has canceled several appearances for security reasons as well.
And
so we haven't heard from him.
That's my question. You know the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, and Trinity, and there's Apostolic, and there's all those churches, House of Hope in Chicago, and these people are outspoken. I've never heard the Reverend Jeremiah Wright not speak to anything. So obviously someone has said, shut up, be quiet.
Well, no, but I think, but it is also a matter of being sensitive to the reality that he is running for president, and so therefore, who are the folks continuing it? I mean, and so that's really what you have here. I mean, when I listen to conservative talk radio and watch some of these conservative commentators they're the ones who frankly want to keep the drama going. They don't want to take the conversation.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because in any political event, in any presidential campaign, you have people who are going to pick up on controversy.
Of course.
And that's what the media does. Why should the rules be any different for this campaign?
Not different. Not different.
So why are people saying we shouldn't talk about it? Why are people saying that he shouldn't answer the question?
I think there's a difference between saying we shouldn't talk about it, or do we have the exact same conversation every single day for the past 2 weeks? Because here's the question I get all the time.
Okay.
Well, why did he stay? He's answered the question, why he stayed. Why didn't he leave? He's answered the question. Okay, we keep talking about that over and over and over again. That's what I mean by people saying they want an answer. They want an answer that they're not going to get.
Okay, hang on.
And so we keep asking it, maybe we'll get the answer.
Okay, hang on, Roland, because it's not just the appearance on The View, but also in several letters, a church letter, and also Trumpet Magazine. He said things about Italians. He said things about Jews.
One second.
All those things.
Right, now hold up. Put it in context.
Yeah.
When he talked about Italians, was he speaking about biblical days in terms of in the Roman days?
Well, I mean, No, but what was it? Wait, hang on. The thing is, when you write something, do you say, looking down their garlic noses at the Galatians?
First of all, I don't fully, but again though, I don't fully understand what he was talking about. I haven't read what he said. But my point is this here. Was he talking about biblical days, or was he talking about last week?
But does that matter? When you say that someone's looking down their garlic nose, does that really matter? I mean, no, that sounds offensive.
Well, of course it sounds offensive, but if I'm talking about Galatians, which is a book in the Bible, if I'm talking about Romans, if I'm talking about 1 John, 2 John, I'm talking about Timothy, I'm speaking within that context. This is the problem that I believe that we have in the media when it comes to faith, and that is we don't understand the faith context in the real world context. When I listen to even some of the readings and the teachings of a John Hagee, or when I look at some of the past readings of a Francis Schaeffer, I'm looking at people who are offering a perspective through a theological prism. And the problem is, but there's a reason it's a theological prism.
Yeah, but don't you say you can understand when people say it seems that you're making excuses for something that
no, I'm not.
On any level, in any sense, no matter how you put it, what context, it is offensive, and people are offended by that.
Right.
If someone had made the same comment biblically about African Americans, a white preacher, then people would be offended by that as well.
And the point I'm making, this is what we have here. We have the intersection of three of the most volatile issues ever, and that is faith, race, and politics. And what those are the three issues. You're going to get people who are going to be passionate and angry and fired up. And I think one of the problems that we have in the media, I'm going to be very honest, is we have a lack of understanding of faith. Whenever the issue of faith comes up, we don't really want to tackle this. We don't want to touch it because it's a lot more complex than we want to admit to. And I think that's part of our problem, which is one thing. I mean, I'm grateful last year, and we hosted several faith specials.
I understand that.
Because we have to examine that particular issue.
I think people will agree with you on part of it, but you cannot use faith and the Bible or any book or any doctrine or any belief to discriminate or say derogatory
But ideologically, Don, this is what we do know. Ideologically, both sides do. And that's the problem that I think that we have here, and that is, do we have a secular standard or a faith standard? Or do we say, well, no, there's one standard? That's why when I listen to people on the left and the right, I listen to, it's like people say, well, he's a fiery preacher. Well, yes, so the Southern Baptist preacher who's with the Southern Baptist Church who might be white. So are you saying that folks shouldn't preach that way? The reality is, I think what we should be examining is what happens in churches.
Right.
What is it, not just in my church, what happens in churches across the country. Now, we have that conversation. That might be an interesting thing.
That's a very interesting conversation that we should have. But
that's a challenge that we have.
They've wrapped me like 6 times, but I'll let you talk because it's a very interesting conversation. I wish we could move on and talk about other things in this issue, but I'm always surprised when people think it's going to be any different in this campaign than it is in any other campaign.
No, it's not.
Roland Martin, thank you,
faith
sir.
Is faith.
Thank you very much.
Don, keep the faith.
Thank you, Roland.
No matter who